Chris, headline number 5, Old Navy is scaling back its efforts to offer more inclusive women's sizing in stores. So according to the Wall Street Journal, Gap Inc. CEO Sonia Singhal said that Old Navy stores will no longer carry all the sizes that it once did. Old Navy will continue to offer on its website the full size range, which runs from 0 to 30 and extra small to 4X, but in stores that will no longer be the case. Now, Chris, we've talked a lot about this one leading up to today's podcast, and you have a lot of experience with this. So I'd love if you can kind of give us a background, because when you were at Gap, I mean, they were looking at extended sizes. What's the whole story behind this, and why is Old Navy making this move?
Yeah, I mean, this story is actually a little disheartening in a lot of ways. It's kind of sad, but in reality, you can kind of see how we got here, and I think that's what we've talked about in the previous show. And you're right. So at the background for everyone listening, like I used to work at the Gap, and I was in charge of men's denim sizing and women's denim sizing at one point in time. And at the time, we did this investigation to say, okay, we had 40 sizes, which included like things like 36 pant legs for really tall people.
Right.
And we did the analysis of saying, like, should we take that from 40 down to 30? And when we did the math, like you look at those ancillary sizes at that time, and you were doing somewhere between like 5 and 8% of your business, which may seem like a lot, but when you double click into it, when you look across every store where you're having to send those jeans, it's not a very profitable decision, because you're selling less than 1 per store per week on average in those sizes.
Right.
Now you might sell them in your better stores, but you're ending up with a markdown or just a huge inventory carrying cost from trying to place all these sizes in the store. So when you get to a story like this in Old Navy, you're talking about like kind of that range of size, but then you're probably also talking about even harder to sell sizes across a general population. And so there's a reason this gets difficult, and you can see why they're pulling back. And so I think ultimately they've arrived at the right answer. And I want to get your thoughts on this too, but the right answer to me is you warehouse them in your e-commerce distribution center, because it's one pool of inventory. You can send it wherever you need to. You make them available for ship to store. You know, you can pick them up in store, try them on in store. You put all the full omnichannel capabilities around it. But net, it's a really difficult game to get into unless you are 100% confident that you want to take the loss on this from a gross margin return on investment standpoint to offer this to your customer. But I think history shows you that that's hard to do. This is why things like big and tall stores exist. Like they capitalize on this market specifically, and that's what they tailor their business to. When you're trying to be everything for everyone at mass, it just becomes really difficult to do.
Well, I appreciate that perspective. And I wonder then what brands should do. I mean, there is a demand increasing for extended sizes that we've started to see. There are more brands that are going specifically after an extended size market. Do you think brands, like immediately I go to like, do brands continue to offer this? I mean, we saw like Athleta go and really stand out for this, talking about doing extended sizes in stores. But I mean, are they responsible then for pulling that budget, if that's going to be where they're going to stand, the budget for the loss of items that they don't sell in the store? Is marketing going to cover that? Like, how do they figure out how to cover those gaps? Because it's going to be paid for somewhere. I think the other part of this that I question too is like, what's happening to all of those unsold goods too? You know, as from a customer perspective, yes, it's not an ideal situation that you can't go to an Old Navy now and find all of your sizes on the rack, but you know, if they're not available, you know, are those sizes that don't get sold or that are getting returned to stores, are they just ending up in landfills? And is keeping them in an e-commerce warehouse a better way to hang on to that and make sure that those get distributed? I don't know what your thoughts are.
No, it's a great point. I mean, it's a great point. There's probably a sustainability angle too, in terms of how you try to approach these consumers with these types of products, right?
Yeah.
You know, in today's day and age, I don't necessarily think having something in a store is a requirement to a good retail experience, right? You could still offer these sizes online. You could elect to have them shipped to the store if you want, and they could try them on in the store. And that way it avoids the downside of trying to say, you know, hey, we have these for everyone in every store, because you can't just put them in your best stores, right? That's a marketing nightmare. Like, oh, you can, you know, if you're this size, you can shop in this store, but two miles down the street, you can't. Like, that doesn't work. But I think you can create a good experience, to your point, and probably a more sustainable one in the long run as well, without
Right.
having to worry about, marking this stuff all out, or salvage it, or get rid of it, or send it to a
Well,
jobber, or whatever.
and what about what Amazon Style is doing? I mean, I know that's possible for Amazon because they have the money to do it, but
Mhm.
I'm curious your thought, like, could Old Navy start to do something where, you don't pay for the product, you just order it all to an Old Navy, you try it on there and then return what you don't want right in the store and then walk out with what you do. I mean, is that something like, how does that work into the mechanics of everything, and what products you have on hand and how many of those products you have on hand?
Yeah, I think that's a much better solve when you're talking about SKUs with highly variable sales distributions
Sure.
relative to sizes that are always selling, and like the medium, how much
Right.
you can sell the medium in every location. The extra small, to elaborate on the point, is very hard to tell the pattern, especially in clothing where things change so significantly one style to the next.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a much more sustainable and economically viable business model, because it's not forcing you to upfront allocate your product to 1,000 stores to your best guess that you have at that time.
Fair.
And so, yeah, that absolutely makes sense. That's one of the brilliant ideas around, Amazon's model. But, getting back to the question, I think ultimately it depends what brand you are, how much volume you can command in these sizes. There's probably some retailers that can command a significant amount of volume in these sizes without having the same impact to their bottom line financials. But
Sure.
most specialty retailers are not going to be able to do that. And so if they're going to do it, if they're going to take that risk, they're going to have to hold hands and say, look, it's a marketing investment. Here's how much that marketing investment is going to cost us. And we think it's going to be worthwhile. And therefore, we have to cut our budget in marketing somewhere else if we're going to make this work.
Right. Well, and makes the case for future, fit tech sizing and other things that are helping, the other technology that's can be used to try to help plan this out better too in the future, hopefully. But
Right.